Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has officially been announced. The 12-team playoff has been revealed. It is SMU in over Alabama. SMU losing last night, coming back late against Clemson. They were down by 14. They tied it. They lose on a 56-yard field goal. They get in, and they're ranked above Clemson because they have 2 losses. Clemson has 3 losses, but this is very clear. The committee is saying that they do value teams making the conference championship game. You can see you've got Penn State, who has 2 losses, above Ohio State, who also has 2 losses, although Ohio State beat Penn State on the road. Because Penn State made it to their conference championship game, they're trying to put a value on that, and it does seem like that's a heavy emphasis when it comes to it. But just going through this bracket, you do have Texas as the number 5 overall seed. There's arguments to be made both ways when it comes to Texas, whether or not they should be lower than the 5 seed. They do end up getting the 5. They did, I mean, they've got no ranked wins, but you had a very close loss to Georgia, and they do have amazing analytics. You take a look at their strength of record. Their overall numbers are really good outside of the wins. They just don't have any wins. Am I surprised they're number 5? No, I'm not, because I saw they were a very heavy favorite to be the number 5 seed based off of betting. But they are the number 5 seed, and so they're at number 5 right there. That's another thing to where it's like the committee doesn't want to punish Texas for being in their conference championship game and losing and knock them down below a Notre Dame who didn't play in a conference championship, an Ohio State who didn't play in a conference championship, things like that. So they will face Clemson. Clemson, they were ranked 18th coming into this week. They get the auto bid, so they're the 12. They end up winning the ACC. They are by far, at least if you look at the metrics, the worst team in the playoff field. Although they're still a dangerous team. They're definitely not the least talented team. You know, they're more talented than SMU. They beat SMU. They were in control of that game. They're more talented, I would say, than in Indiana. They're more talented, I would say. But they haven't had the best of years. They're a very bipolar team. So that game will be happening, and that will be the Friday night game. The game will be hosted by Texas. That is a home game for Texas. They are going to be big favorites in that game. Friday night, 8 o'clock on ABC. That time is confirmed, and you do have the winner of that taking on Arizona State. So a very good draw there, you would think, for Texas. They're going to be big favorites over Clemson. It's a home game, and then you get Arizona State on a neutral field. Arizona State, of course, makes it because of the way the auto bids work, the auto buys, things like that. I know people are complaining about it. It's not a good format. We understand that because with this format, they're treating every conference equally when there's a clear discrepancy with the Big Ten and the SEC in specific versus some of these other conferences. But Arizona State does end up making it, and they get the bye there. They're the final bye, the 4 seed. They did crush Iowa State. Kenny Dillingham, he's got those players playing great. And we'll see what happens, but I would expect Texas to beat Clemson and then beat Arizona State. But who knows? We don't know with upsets, things like that. The next matchup, you do have the 8v9 game. This is what we all predicted. It is Tennessee taking on Ohio State. The winner will face Oregon. So there's a lot to talk about with this. When you look at Tennessee and Ohio State, I knew that Ohio State was always going to be in front of Tennessee. That was always the argument. Would Tennessee be able to host, or is it going to be Ohio State? But when they had Ohio State ranked above Tennessee last week, that kind of tipped their hand, and it was always going to be Ohio State, considering neither of these two teams faced each other this week. Little fun thing here, Marshall, who Ohio State beat in like week 3, ended up finishing the season 10-3, so maybe that's another ranked win for Ohio State, but that's a little side note. But yeah, Ohio State just had better wins than Tennessee. They had better losses. They had a slightly better schedule. They had better numbers. They had a better strength of record. They were always going to be ranked above Tennessee. And it is unfortunate if you are Tennessee. You're that 9 seed, so you're very close to hosting. But Ohio State enters that game against Tennessee. That's going to be the Saturday night game, I would assume, on ESPN primetime at Ohio Stadium. The biggest matchup by far in round 1. A Big Ten power, the Big Ten power against an SEC team there. And then the winner will face Oregon. So a tough draw for Oregon. You know, if you're the number 1 seed, you would much rather get Boise State's draw, which is Penn State versus SMU, rather than Ohio State versus Tennessee. Even with Ohio State struggling and losing to Michigan, it's just the way it works. So Oregon, the number 1 overall seed, we knew that. They're the only undefeated team. They're the only 13 win team in this field, and they just won the Big Ten, so they're the number 1 seed. But it is a tough draw facing either Tennessee or Ohio State. Tennessee has a very, very good defensive line. Ohio State, you could argue, the most talented team in college football, so we will see there. Then you've got SMU taking on Penn State. I believe this is the noon game on Saturday on TNT. So SMU is going to come into this game as underdogs. SMU, they make it over Alabama. Me personally, I thought they were going to put Alabama in originally when I woke up this morning. Alabama just has better metrics than SMU, but I can understand the committee saying, no, we still want there to be value on the conference championships, considering if SMU wouldn't have played in their conference championship sitting at 11-1, they're pretty much a lock to make it. So are they really going to be punished? I also think it was the fact that SMU only lost by 3 points as another reason why they're in over Alabama. But if you're Penn State, you would much rather face SMU than Alabama. I know Alabama had some really bad games, but their ceiling is so much higher than SMU's, and you get them at home. Penn State's going to be big favorites in that game. I do think they'll beat SMU. And then look at that, they get Boise State in round 2. So, you could certainly make an argument. It's probably better for Penn State to face an SMU team and then face Boise State on a neutral field than it would be for Oregon to get a bye, but then have to face an Ohio State or a Tennessee. And that's why people are saying it's unbalanced. But that's just the matchup. Boise State gets the 3 seed. There was some talk with Arizona State's blowout win over Iowa State. Would Arizona State leapfrog Boise State and be the 3 seed? But it was never going to happen because Boise State also faced a ranked team and won easily against UNLV. And also Boise State was ranked like 5 spots higher than Arizona State. So would Arizona State really jump that high up? It was just very unlikely to happen there. And then looking at the final game here, it is Indiana taking on Notre Dame. That's an in-state little rivalry. Not really a rivalry, but I guess we'll see what happens. Notre Dame, they're around 8.5-point favorites in this game. I believe this will be the 4 o'clock afternoon game on TNT on Saturday. And we would expect Notre Dame to beat Indiana. Indiana's kind of both of these teams are weird because Indiana, I know people dismiss them immediately because you didn't beat anyone. The one team you faced, you lost to. Ohio State crushed or easily beat Indiana. But Indiana did make a lot of mistakes in that game. And Indiana has been throttling teams. I know the teams have not been the best, but still, the way they've been winning the games is very impressive. Notre Dame is very similar. The thing with Notre Dame is, they just don't really have a passing attack. They don't have a passing game. And Indiana does. I think you could argue Indiana's a little bit more complete than Notre Dame, but Notre Dame does have a better defense. They're more talented. They're at home. So that could be a very fun game. We'll see. But I would expect Notre Dame to win that game and then face Georgia. And when it comes to Notre Dame against Georgia, 2 good defenses. Notre Dame's defense going up against that Georgia situation with their quarterback being injured. That could be good for Notre Dame. We'll have to see. But we knew Indiana and Notre Dame were both going to make it. We pretty much, I knew that Ohio State was going to be the 8, Tennessee was going to be the 9, Indiana was going to be the 10. The other seeds are a little bit subjective based on where you want to put Texas. Do you really want to punish them for losing their conference championship, and then they've got no good wins? Do you want to punish Penn State for losing their conference championship? I think if Penn State would have gotten crushed by Oregon, you could make an argument that Ohio State should be in front of Penn State. I mean, imagine Ohio, it is so much different when you look at Ohio State versus Penn State. Imagine Ohio State was a 6 seed. You face SMU and then Boise State and then probably a Georgia. Now Ohio State has to face Tennessee, Oregon, and then Texas probably. It's a brutal, that's why you got to beat Michigan. You got to beat Michigan in a game like that, and they weren't able to do it. But guys, I would say really no surprises here, especially when you look at the betting and the odds and stuff like that. Pretty much everyone was saying SMU was going to be in over Bama. But that's what they ended up doing. There's also the argument maybe there was the narrative of Bama getting special treatment, and they didn't want to give Bama that special treatment again, considering they put Bama in last year when you had FSU, who was undefeated even with the quarterback injury. There's also that narrative as well. But I am a little bit just surprised coming in today. I thought it would have been Bama. You could argue because it was only a 3-point loss on a really long field goal. That's why SMU stayed in. But just all the metrics favor Alabama. They all do. And I know Alabama has bad losses. Trust me, I get it. But Notre Dame lost to a MAC school. And I know it's not apples to oranges because Notre Dame only has 1 loss. Alabama has 3 losses, but Alabama also has a much harder schedule. So listen, these are very hard things to siphon through. But either way, guys, that is just the result of the 12-team playoff. The game times, this Clemson-Texas game, Friday night, 8 o'clock. Tennessee-Ohio State, Saturday night, 8 o'clock. SMU-Penn State, noon on Saturday. Indiana-Notre Dame, 4 o'clock on Saturday. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.